And call this meeting to order. If I could have you all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'd like to welcome all of the guests that are with us this evening in the audience. Bob, would you mind reading the school board norms?
The board developed norms are: decisions will be based on the board's strategic plan, its mission, and what's best for students. The board will act as stewards of tax dollars. Board members will complete foundation work to be prepared for meetings. Meetings will be efficient. All perspectives will be voiced and heard. All board members will maintain a professional decorum.
Thank you. We have nothing under public communication. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Moving on, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Roger, second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on into our regular agenda, our first item on for tonight is recognition. It was by a clerical error that we missed one of our student athletes last time we did our recognition, and we wanted to correct that and make sure that we got them their recognition. So for boys tennis, we are going to ask, I apologize, I didn't have the file open. There we go. We would like to recognize Isaac Mingmong. He was second at the WDA tournament, and he was also awarded all conference. Thanks so much. Yeah, just come on up over here so we can get your mug up on the... All right. You got him? Thank you, Isaac. So moving on in our agenda, we have nothing under correspondence. So moving then to reports, do we have the student council report?
Hi. Not much to report on this time. I just wanted to summarize. I remember last time I talked about our Stuff the Civic that we planned on doing. It actually went really well. I think we estimated around 5,000 pounds. Of course, we didn't hit our goal, but I mean, we were pleasantly surprised with how it turned out. We were really happy with it. We had 5 truckloads full. 2 trucks went to the Salvation Army, 2 trucks went to Community Action, and 1 truck went to the high school. And we've already been kind of talking about what we want to do differently about next year. We think we're going to move it up to Thanksgiving, because we do, a lot of the schools do Thanksgiving food drives, so it's much easier to get them involved in our school drives, or our food drive if they're already doing that, and so that's on that. And then up towards the end of January, beginning of February, we have our snow week coming up, and during that week we elect a snow court, which will be elected this week, and we do our dance on Friday. And I mean, there's not much new that we have planned for snow week so far, so yeah.
All right. Any questions for the student council? Well, as always, we appreciate you taking a moment to come down and visiting with us, and we always like to hear what the students are up to. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So moving on, next in our reports is Dr. Leck, the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. You do have my written report. I'm going to skim through some of these because they're agenda topics later on. I wanted to bring your attention to the upcoming negotiation seminar, February 6th and 7th. So if you remember, this workshop works a little differently. We have a early bird that you sign up for separately. The negotiation seminar is the 7th, so that includes things like, the early bird, which is on the 6th, includes things like FERPA non-renewals. There's a session on a paperless management solution. And then threat assessment. So each of those are separate costs. So if you'd like to attend one of those or all of those, you would need to make Jane aware so we can, or make us aware so we can pass it along to Amy to register. Then on the 7th is the traditional negotiation seminar. And actually, you may have looked through that and noticed that President Schmidt and I are involved in that. We were asked by NDSBA to be one of the breakouts for the larger sessions, and we were happy to do that. And it's always good, as you know, from being in those sessions, it's always good to hear from the field on how the process went. If there's specific questions, it's always easier when it's boots on the ground. And so we want to make sure, NDSBA always wants to make sure that's a relevant experience for everybody. And so when districts are willing to share, always makes it more relevant for those that are attending. So I think we always want to try to do that when we can. A quick note, Finance Ad Hoc Committee, I'll want to pull that group together. Sally and I will want to discuss what we do with support staff for next year. And so we're beginning the budgetary process now. So, that's a big piece that we need to be aware of. And so we want to bounce ideas and look at staffing there for support staff. And that would then, of course, as always, come before the full board for approval. But we want to have that go through committee first. So we're looking probably for board approval in March or April. So looking to February, have that meeting to discuss support staff. The census, you probably have seen some of the social media blasts that we put out for the census. I don't think it's a surprise to know that federal funding depends a lot upon an accurate student count. The only way we do that is through a census. And so it is really crucially important for the school district, along with other entities that receive federal funding, to get as accurate a census count as we can. So we've been engaged in the Census Committee since the outset, and we've tried to provide a little bit of information, a little education to our community members, to parents on the census. We provided a kind of a why is the census important feedback or a blast out, and then there's also opportunities for short-term employment that come about for lots of folks in the community that could take advantage of an opportunity for employment through the census. So we wanted to make sure people are aware of that. We have another one coming in the near future on the census as well. Again, we just want to keep it on the forefront of people's minds because it's crucially important, not only to the schools, although it is for us, but it's really across the board. Anybody that receives federal funding, an accurate census account is crucially important, and the best way we can get people to participate is education. So we want to provide that the best that we can. Just making you aware, each year our wellness committee meets. That includes teachers, support staff, administrators. We have external people. NDSU Extension Office is there as well. They review our wellness policy. We've kind of taken that a step further, where we try to see what is lacking in our wellness in our schools. How can we better support that? Help us kind of target things that we're doing well, but also target areas that we aren't doing as well. And we make goals each year, this wellness committee, and we don't do that to say to our schools, thou shalt now do this, another log on the fire, so to speak. But it is an opportunity for us to encourage to participate in those wellness goals. So for us this year, a big focus was for us to create goals that cultivated staff and student cohesiveness and supported a positive school culture. And so we've asked that all the schools consider putting a goal in place for wellness along those lines as well. I'm going to kind of skate through the board education on PLCs, because that'll be coming up a little bit later. Just wanted you to know on this, though, I'm excited about it because it's really a good opportunity, because this is such a comprehensive process. We use a lot of buzzwords. That was one of the things we heard in our board retreat, that maybe sometimes we need to get deeper into the work of education in board education. And we wanted to really dive into what PLCs are over a series of board education, rather than just providing the overview. We have a process outlined there's 4 corollary questions, 4 essential questions to PLCs. And I want to provide the overview tonight, just to give you the primer of what a PLC really is, how it operates. But then over the next 4 meetings, have a teacher and an instructional coach come in and present to you on each of those 4 questions. So this is question 1, what do we want students to know and understand? Well, how does that work in a PLC? What does that mean? What are the byproducts of that? What is the work that goes into it? Because if you really want to make improve schools, it's a ton of work. And PLC's research-based process to improve schools, and I'll talk about a little bit what you can expect in terms of growth and what's been correlated in terms of stacking effectiveness. And it's really pretty impressive. But just know that at this meeting, that brief overview, and over the series of next 4 meetings, you'll hear from teachers and instructional coaches, those that are in the PLCs doing the work, and they can show you what that question means, how they take it, and how they use it to improve schools in their classrooms and instruction. So I'm excited about it. I think it's great. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was just an opportunity that's coming. This isn't anything the board needs to act on. It's really just for awareness. I think we're all aware that the Health Insurance Committee makes decisions related to health insurance. You know, the board's impact to that is in the negotiations process when you determine how much goes into the fund. That's from a full board's perspective. You do have voting members now on the Health Insurance Committee, but regardless of that, I think it's still important for the board to be aware of some opportunities that are coming related to health insurance pooling. I talked in my written report, and I won't get into that a whole lot, about how that started, how we started in 6 years ago with Hayes. As consultants, they provide a ton of great information to the Health Insurance Committee. I know that the Health Insurance Committee as a whole takes that information, really delves into it. As I've said before, the people that serve in that committee know about as much as health insurance as you could possibly hope that they would know. It's a very impressive group, but they look at trend data, recommendations on plan design. It's a think tank where we can take big ideas and turn them into practical solutions. I think they do a wonderful job, but we also need that consultant. We need somebody that can dig deep into that data and give us that insight. So 6 years ago, we did enter into that agreement. The Health Insurance Committee entered into that agreement with Hayes and to provide us all this information. So through those connections with Hayes, through connections with the governor's office, the state insurance commissioner, and some of those connections came because of the Nearsight Clinic, opening the Nearsight Clinic that got a lot of attention in the executive branch. They were curious about what we were doing, why we were doing it, what we were hoping to see, somewhat thinking outside the box of how we can provide, how can we benefit both the school, the community at large, and save money. That's not something you get to do in healthcare very much. So we had a lot of questions about that. And through that, some discussions occurred with the SEC. We know the SEC is our Regional Education Association, 42 schools banding together to say how can we improve education and the educational product for all schools. And so through that, try to make a long story short, Kyle Davison, who's the lead administrator of the SEC, but also a legislator, began some discussions with me, began some discussions with other legislators, the state insurance commissioner, related to just what we learned through this process. That kind of organically grew into what else can we do? And one of the conversations we had is we have a huge advantage in our district for being self-funded. We take, like anybody that has this kind of benefit, you take risk along with being self-funded. There's a reason why not everybody can do it. There's risks inherent. You have to reach a certain size of school. You have to have a certain number of employees really to get the return on investment from something like health insurance pooling. We're at that critical mass. And the conversation was around, well, we have a lot of schools that don't have that critical mass. So how could they take advantage of something like we can take advantage with our Health Insurance Committee and being self-funded? So that came, Senator Davison, came kind of organically to the idea that, boy, we really need something for more than just schools like Jamestown that have that size. How can we make that profitable and workable for the Kindreds, the New Rockford Cheyennes, the Carringtons, those schools? And so he started working, through some of those connections with Hayes, trying to connect schools together and see if there is a way that we could take advantage and pool. And I'll tell you, they found very quickly about 20 schools that have already had interest. You're talking about 700 employees, and they're talking about $1.5 million in savings for schools, for those 20 schools, just with those 700 employees. Now you're talking about there's potential interest for government agencies that might want to become involved, larger school districts that might become involved. So what, I guess, I said I was going to make the long story short here, and I don't think I did, but here's the payoff, here's the benefit. Why am I bringing it up? Well, if there's a health insurance pool, there may be an opportunity for us as a district to save some money, even maintaining what we have, staying self-funded. There's an opportunity there's a couple costs that are pretty significant for us in health insurance. That's our stop loss. That's the point at which we don't pay anymore. As an individual employee, we don't pay anymore. We reach a certain line, and we set that. That's part of our premium discussions. Once it gets to that point, the health insurance plan pays the rest. Okay, so that's a pretty significant determining factor on what your rates are. The second piece of that is administrative costs. What's the cost to administer the plan? You can leverage the more you have in that pool. You can leverage reducing costs in stop loss, which is a big driver for costs for us, and also administrative costs, another pretty key driver for us. And so if we can find a way, which I think we can, to maintain exactly what we have in terms of making all of our decisions, we could probably leverage that pool and decrease our costs, the administrative costs, and decrease our costs for our stop loss. So really, we see no difference except for saving money. So the initial, based on those 20 schools, kind of the initial numbers are about $150,000 that we could save just by joining the pool. Now, that's not a decision that this board makes. That's a decision Health Insurance Committee makes. The board's represented on that committee. But it's just something I want you to be aware of. It's something that the Health Insurance Committee is looking at. They're doing their due diligence to make sure that this is the right plan for our decision. Sometimes saving money, just saving money, isn't always the right decision to make. But I think that they are doing their due diligence. I just wanted to make you aware. I think it's a great example of what happens in North Dakota when we all get together, identify a problem, a practice, and work to fix it. So just wanted to make you aware. I said I was going to be short. I'm sorry that I wasn't, but I think it's hard to talk about something like that without getting into the details. So with that, I stand for questions.
Jason?
On that insurance pool, it's my understanding that if we would decide to join, that doesn't mean it's all one plan, correct? We could
No.
still keep our.
Correct.
I think that's an important distinction to make.
Yep.
Yep, you're correct. Everything would stay the same in terms of our plan. Health Insurance Committee would still get to make all plan design decisions. The value would be that we would work with the other schools that are also in the pool, and we would leverage the dollars that are in there and provide more options. And in some ways, it actually provides more options for our Health Insurance Committee because other plans may be more attractive when you leverage all those schools working together.
Heidi?
I appreciate everyone just taking a look at this. I think health insurance costs are only going to be increasing, and I think for all employers, any chance you can be creative and continue to look, it's one of those things we're not always going to be able to do it how we used to do it because there are so many things that are changing, the rules are changing, and I think as creative as we can be, it's an important benefit that we offer to all of our employees, and I think if we can be as creative as we can to make it cost effective, we're doing the right thing.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Luck on his report? Okay, with that, we're going to move on and we're going to move into board education. We're just going to flip-flop those. So we'll call Mr. Delzer and Mr. Romans up first. They're going to be visiting with us tonight on therapy animals. Good evening.
So I'm Mr. Delzer, this is Mr. Romans. This isn't a new idea in schools. new to us. So we were presented the opportunity to give some information to you guys on therapy dogs and what they could look like at Jamestown Public Schools. Some learning targets, what we kind of wanted to get through to you guys, understanding the benefits that therapy dogs will bring Jamestown Public Schools, explaining the difference between therapy dogs and service dogs, and then describing how therapy dogs aid in social and emotional learning.
Okay, some of the benefits of therapy dogs are that they assist in the calming process in order to begin the de-escalation of a behavioral outburst. A lot of times, we get into a behavioral situation and we're told to calm down, and I'm not sure how many people in the world have ever calmed down by being told to calm down. Dogs can assist in that beginning process. It also assists teachers in self-care by providing non-judgmental few minutes of comfort. I've actually had experience having a therapy dog in my classroom, and to be honest, had just as many teachers in my classroom seeing the therapy dog as I did students. It gives kids a chance to read without being corrected at every word. As teachers, we want kids to learn, and if Skippy is reading a book to us, we want to always correct that word, and that sometimes turns kids off from reading. And when they can cuddle up with a dog or curl up with a dog and read their versions with a dog, they're not corrected. The dog's not going to paw at them to correct their reading. It gives kids a sense of pride and responsibility for theirs and others' behavior in a classroom. Kids are going to act better when they know that there's something else at risk. If kids are taking pride in that dog in the classroom, they are going to be much more apt to settle down quicker. They are going to be much more cautious when it comes to other people entering the room. And it also addresses the social emotional needs of both students and staff without something more that anybody has to do. We've obviously got a lot of different things going on in our school district right now, which are all great initiatives and all great things. This isn't another thing. One of the things that I'm sure you guys hear complaints of from teachers is, well, this is just another thing that we have to do. When are we going to have time for this? This is something that we can add to the school district with no cost to the school district, with no extra time commitment to a teacher. One question that is often asked to us, I know, is the difference between therapy dogs and service dogs. Therapy dogs, the biggest benefit is they are not assigned to one person, and they can be pet, they can be snuggled, they can be talked to, they can be interacted with in any appropriate way, however the handler feels comfortable doing so. They're also to be able to be within sight of the handler, but they don't necessarily need to be right next to me. I can be teaching a lesson, and a student can be over being calmed or reading to a therapy dog that may or may not be on my caseload. They are considered, they are a dog. When they come home with me, the vest comes off, and they're a dog. It's not like a service dog, and I'll get into that. My therapy dog still digs in the garbage. I won't lie about that. It is a less intense certification process for licensure. I know that there has been some flack caught in the news. There's been some things on social media with service dogs. There's been a few companies that have actually come out, and basically all you have to do is write a letter to this company saying you have this service dog, and they will certify you as having a service dog with no training required, with no proof of anything. So all you basically have to do is slap a vest on your dog. With the therapy dogs, we have to go through some things, and I'll explain that in just a minute. The service dog is tied to the handler only, and that dog is also supposed to have a specific job or jobs for that person that are for a specific reason. They're more specialized in their training with their certifications. Some of them will turn on lights for someone in a wheelchair. We've all seen seeing eye dogs. Some can recognize seizures. Believe it or not, some dogs can actually detect blood sugar by their smell. We see a lot of veterans, a lot of people with PTSD that have symptom recognition with service dogs. And they also have much more specialized training and are expected to choose the handler. Service dogs, also one thing I didn't put into this is they are also, to get a true service dog, it is much, much more expensive. Therapy dogs, truthfully, any dog can be a therapy dog. And I say that, and there is some truth to there's dogs that are too wound up to be a therapy dog. No one is going to bring one of those types of dogs into a classroom, into a school system. As far as social emotional learning is a major movement, not just at JPS, but at schools across the nation. We all know and we all see the differences in how mental health is really becoming a high talked about a trend in schools. This is a way to address that, again, without having to put any more burden on anybody else. It gives something to hold on to or to pet in order to calm down from an anxious situation. You know, I've used different tools. Many other teachers have used different tools. This is just another tool to add to the toolbox. And it gives kids a non-judgmental ear. One benefit that I've had and seen is that kids are aware that teachers are mandated reporters, but they will often talk to dogs in ways that they will not talk to teachers or staff. And teachers may or may not be within earshot of that. It may be a conversation that we need to hear and report. It may not be. It may just be something that the kid needs to get off the chest that they don't want to tell the teacher, but they can say it out loud, say it to the dog, and then they're good. And they're good throughout the rest of their day. So what could take 3 weeks away from a kid can get solved in 3 minutes by just talking to a dog. It makes kids feel comfortable in a situation that provides fear or traumatic response. Examples, we used to take my therapy dog down to where we gave flu shots, and any kid that was scared of flu shots we would sit the dog on the floor. The kid would sit next to the dog and would pet the dog with one arm and get the flu shot in the other arm, and then they were good to go. Other situations are if we know of something that's happened through the night, whether, being on the fire department, I've been on fire calls where I've seen kids. I've been on fire calls when I've heard, oh, it's all going to be okay, Mr. Romans is here. We know that traumatic events happen every day in our kids' lives. They're able to come down and to be able to know that school is a safe place for them. One thing, and as much as we want to help kids, dogs don't lecture, give advice, or tell kids what to do. Sometimes kids just need to talk about things. Sometimes they need to just say things and get it off their chest. And we can often say, we try it with the best of interest. Oh, I know what you mean. I know what you're going through. When in reality, we don't. And the kids don't expect the dogs to say anything. And that's where they'll turn to them rather than us to go through that. Have had some questions in the certification process. There are different organizations that have different rules and regulations. The one that I personally have used and has also been used in the area is called Love on a Leash. I've had great success with them in the past. They're very, very easy to work with. The first step is they are evaluated by a certified trainer and must pass a control evaluation, which is similar to an obedience test. If any of you are familiar with the Canine Good Citizen program, it somewhat replicates that. Next, the dog will practice. It does 10 practice visits. I always consider it dog student teaching. And it's supervised by someone in the facility. And in my case, it would be the principal. And in someone else's cases who maybe is a principal, or it would just be somebody else that would be willing to sign off that this dog's doing okay. Then the paperwork's all sent in, and along with photos of the dog, they will give you then a card that must be carried at all times. The reason being is, if I'm walking up and down the hallways with a dog and a parent stops me and wonders why in the world I've got a dog in the school, I can take out that card and say, this dog is certified by Love on a Leash. This dog is permitted to be in public. During the time of certification is usually the time that I use, because obviously that does take time. That's when I would notify the parents using methods deemed appropriate with the principal. Last time that I did it, I simply sent a letter home with the, and we can choose to do that depending on the situation. I know there are others in the district that have expressed interest in doing therapy dog work, but have said that their dog is far from ready to get to this point. So it would depend on how that principal or how that administrator thought appropriate. With the technology that we have, using the app is another way too that we can let parents know that, hey, this dog is going to, potentially be in the school. If you have concerns, please let us know at times. And once the certification is obtained, a schedule would be determined by the handler and the administrator. My tentative intent is to use my therapy dog for the, once everything gets certified, use it at 2 days a week, and a lot's going to determine on the dog. Some dogs can handle 5 days a week. When I had my therapy dog before, she literally came to work with me every week or every day, and if she wasn't feeling well, she would lay by my backpack and wait for me to go. She was ready to go. Some dogs can't handle that kind of stress. Some dogs are a 2 day a week kind of dog, and that's where we listen to them. So, any questions on any of that or anything else that may be of concern?
Well, thank you for coming. I know it was something that we were all eager to hear more about. So with that, Heidi, did you have a comment?
I have a few questions. I'm excited that we're going to give this a try and see how this goes. It's great. Just a couple things for students that might be allergic to dogs. Is the dog like more hypoallergenic kind of thing, and how do we handle that? Is my first question. Secondly, do you feel like you need any additional training for this? And my last question is, why a dog, not a cat? Is there more research that shows that dogs are? Yes. So, well, I just am asking. So, a lot of dog lovers around the table here.
Isn't an uncommon question. Allergies do come up, and there are people that are allergic to dogs. And I have had a conversation with, we do have an individual in our school that the child is allergic to the dog. Now, what the child is not the child that is or potentially will not be on my caseload. Basically, the child just, would not have access to that dog. It would not, the dog is going to be in my room 98% of the time. The only time the dog would come with me is in a situation where I felt the dog was safe, I felt I was safe, I felt the child was safe. So I'm going to take the dog with to help get a student. One way that I used it in the past, there was a student that wouldn't come out from underneath a table. And so they had called me down. I couldn't get the student to come out. I went and got the dog. I said, hey, would you like to come and help me take the dog outside? I had the control part of the leash. He took the other part of the leash, and away we went. And it was safe. It was unintrusive. Nobody else knew what was going on. So that's part of the notification process. Is we do get, the parents that would notify us. My child is allergic. I would then know that this child would unfortunately not be allowed to come into my classroom. That's really the reason of having them come to me rather than me go to them, is so that I don't create a bunch of dander. As far as hypoallergenic, any breed of dog can be certified as a therapy dog. Now I know remind me again of the breed of your dog? Aussie Doodle, and that is a hypoallergenic dog. I have a black lab. Unfortunately, it's not hypoallergenic, but one of the requirements of Love on a Leash is that we keep the dog very well groomed, very well, clean. That's not to say that they're not going to shed a little bit. Every dog, sheds a small amount, and that would just be a matter of me being cognizant of where the dog's spending their time and making sure that area is kept clean. As far as the question on why dogs and not any other animal, there are other certification processes of other animals, but that's just not been a passion of mine. And that's something that if there's ever, if there's somebody else that would wish to explore that, that's kind of on them, I guess. And there has been, believe it or not, a therapy parrot. So I know there are other animals, there are other organizations. My area of passion and experience is therapy dogs.
I was hoping you'd say a parrot or something. I was worried you were going to say like a python.
No.
You got me on the P. I was like, oh, what? Anyway, sorry. Dr. Leck?
Well, just a kind of a follow-up to, I think Mr. Romans did a good job with those questions. Just some follow-up from my perspective, with the first question and allergies. I think it's a really important question that I'm sure others may have, so I'm glad that you asked it. But that's why, as Mr. Roman said, that communicating to families is so important. This doesn't just happen and all of a sudden children show up and there's now a therapy dog on premises. If the allergy, depending on the significance of the allergies, those could all drive what happens in school. But this would be, as Mr. Romans has talked about, a tool in the tool belt. If it's not an appropriate tool, it's probably not in the tool belt. But a lot of that has to happen with communication. When we communicate home, we make sure that people know this is happening. There could be, we talk about allergies, it could be fear of animals. That could actually create anxiety. And so all of those things are important for us to know. But we have to communicate home first. And people have to communicate back in terms of if that's a challenge for their family or for their student. And those are all things that I think schools have found really easy ways to work around. And I think the other answer with the other types of animals comes down to trainability. There is a level of training that's necessary. Dogs by nature have proven to be one of the more trainable animals. So they do well with service animals. They do well as therapy animals for that same reason, the trainability.
Roger?
Once the animal's in the classroom, is it a distraction, or do the kids kind of figure that, that's a tool that you use when it's needed? Or, I suppose when a dog is new in the classroom, it's somewhat of a distraction. Everybody's trying to get to befriend it and stuff.
It does. I can't deny that it doesn't cause a little bit more. I don't know if distraction is the
excitement.
Excitement is maybe a little bit better word. They get excited. Everybody wants to use it, and it does cause some things. I have in the past when I used it while I was waiting for the certification process and the notification process, talked to the kids about dogs. Had kind of discussed with a few teachers on ways that we could use dogs. If they would like to use dogs in their classroom, those classrooms I would go and prepare for that, let them know the rules, let them know, okay, this dog's going to be in here, but if it's going to be a distraction, I'm going to put it into, I would have in my classroom, just for protective services, I teach in a special ed classroom and have the emotional behaviors in my classroom. So what I'm planning to set up is a plastic kennel that is also shaded, so that if in the event that it does become a distraction, the dog is shaded from the kids, they're not able to see it.
Thank you. Dr. Leck?
Yeah, anytime something new is introduced into a classroom or to a school, it creates some level of interest. That's no different than a new piece of technology in the classroom, flexible seating that we integrated into classrooms. For a period of time, that always creates a level of interest. I want to sit on this chair. I want to use this piece of technology. Eventually, that becomes the norm of the school, the norm of the building, and it's used for a certain purpose, and it doesn't become a distraction. Like I said, I think it would be a distraction no more than any other different thing introduced into a classroom.
Jason?
Yeah, I understand the on a needs basis type of thing, if a child will calm down when the dog gets there. But do we try to build a schedule also with these animals, as far as if we know that this dog can do this certain thing for this child? Do we work with the dynamics of the school and the student body is there any routine that the dog has?
And we did use it in social skills lessons when I used the therapy dog previously, and again, it boils down to the needs of the child. Most of the time, we can't tell when we're going to have a bad day or a bad night. Now, when it comes to schedule, like I said, my intention is to have the dog there 2 days a week. So in a sense, yes, it would have a schedule. Now, can I say, okay, so then that means you're only allowed to have a bad night Monday night and Wednesday night because that's when the dog's going to be available? Obviously, I can't do that. So in answering that, it's tough to answer. I don't necessarily schedule, well, at 2 o'clock, you're going to come down and see the dog. Sometimes it'll fit really, really well into social skills lesson that maybe I've planned, or my reading lesson that I have planned. Sometimes kids are going to want to, when they independent read for their reading lesson, will go with the dog and read to it, and I'll kind of have my ear listening. I'll say, okay, you're welcome to read to the dog as long as you do so out loud so I can hear that you're reading.
And I think it kind of depends too on who the handler is. With my situation, I think, a schedule would probably be essential, seeing that I'd be in and out of the office all the time. So I think it's important to know who the handler is. And, Asher's at school, comes with me right now just so I can get him acclimated to the kids. And he's already getting one student daily that had bloody noses quite frequently. And she comes down and sees the dog before they start math. And there's no bloody noses at this point that we've had so far. So I think just the anxiety level goes away if they can go for 5 minutes. And I think that's part of the scheduling that whoever the handler would have then.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent example, and I was just going to follow up with, I think Asher has fit in extremely well to Louis L'Amour, and I do know he's eaten a lot of Mrs. Tomlin Rohr's treats from her drawer. So I think Asher likes, the dehydrated sweet potatoes, so you'll have to get some of those.
Bob?
Mike and I have talked about this quite a bit because my wife had a service dog in another district, and a couple things that have come up in the conversation here. As far as being a disruption, I think sometimes it was the other way around, because one of the things Lainey always used to talk about was if Junior was sleeping in the room, the kids would be quiet because they didn't want to wake him. Shh, you gotta be quiet. Which is, in some classrooms, that's kind of a nice thing. And the other thing, as far as schedules or whatnot, and I know she was in a junior high, so it was a little bit different as far as comings and goings and that. Dogs seem to have an ability to read other kids' needs. And she always talked about our dog going up and just walking up to a kid that was struggling. Or sometimes it was a child that had a physical disability, and just being with that child for a while. So dogs, that's why you can't use cats. Sorry, Heidi. But dogs seem to sense things better than other animals. So I'm really excited about this. So thanks, Mike.
Diane?
This is a joke, but I've heard horses can sense things too. So horses in the classroom. I have 3 questions. I think you've answered 2 of them just by the interaction here. You mentioned the disruption, and I trust everybody that this is all going to work out. It sounds like a fantastic plan, actually. I thought you mentioned at one point that 98% of the time the student would come to the dog and you wouldn't actually be in their classroom. Am I right about that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Then the second question is the liability question. I assume that anything that's happening in the school, the dog would fall under the umbrella of we would be, not held liable were there to be an incident with the dog, just like there'd be an incident with anything else in the school. We can talk about that. And then the third thing is wondering what the teachers think of this. You mentioned reading to a dog, which really grabs my attention. It sounds like a great idea. What do our reading specialists think about a student reading to a dog and supposedly being able to do things, quote, incorrectly, if that's a good thing or if that's something they wouldn't promote?
So the idea of therapy dog for myself came last year when we took the students to Louis L'Amour out to the Humane Society. They brought a book and read to them, and it actually was eye-opening because the students, they were jumping too, but the dogs were jumping, barking. They were really emotional dogs, and by the end of it, almost every dog was laying at the fence at the door opening, like sleeping. So like the sense of calming that the dog had, the kids had the same feeling of they were just relieved that they got this animal calmed down. And so I think reading to the dogs, I think it's twofold because one, it can really calm the dog, and if a student can calm the dog, they have a sense of pride and that they did really well in their reading. So I think, Mrs. Tomlin Rohr's dog comes once a month, and the kids schedule a read to the dog, and they record it and send it home. You know, I think there's a sense of pride in that they've done a really good job reading, just knowing that they can put a dog to sleep. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not sure, but no, I think that was where the therapy dog, and they wanted me to get, the staff at Louis wanted me to get one right away and adopt one. I didn't go that route because I wanted a puppy, unfortunately, but it was really cool to see that, you know, the effect that the dogs had on the kids, but the kids also had on the dogs. And then to answer your liability question, part of the having the therapy dog, you're liable as a handler. You have to have them under your insurance policy. So that's part of the.
At a previous board meeting, we did pass that policy that specifically spoke to the therapy dogs, and it did speak to that exact question. So, yes. Very good. Anybody else? Well, thank you for taking on this task of bringing therapy dogs into our classrooms, into our schools, and I think it'll all work itself out and be good. So thank you. Oh, sorry, one more, Heidi.
I just said maybe we can get an update after a little time passes, and you can kind of let us know how it's going and things that you've adjusted.
Oh, definitely.
And it should, Asher's 3 months old, so he's you can be certified once you're a year.
Yep.
So he's a ways away from being certified. So walking up and down the hallway with children next to him is almost difficult, not impossible right now, especially when the doors are open and treats are in every room. And so it's difficult, but at the same time, I think it'll be rewarding once it's in place. So
Well, we thank you for bringing this tool to our district.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so then we will move on to our PLC overview. Dr. Leck.
Well, thank you. As I talked before, we're really going to get in the meat of PLCs over the next 4 meetings. Just draw your attention to the memo. It's Board Memo 54 that I put in place to kind of provide you just that long-term primer to what professional learning communities are. For our district in our strategic plan, adopted in April of 2019, we identified successful implementation PLCs as a model for our district. And as you'll see in the next 4 meetings, you can really see, and actually you'll see when we talk strategic planning and the strategic plan update, progress monitoring, how embedded the idea of professional learning communities is. The one thing, or 2 things I'll tell you about PLC work. One, it is a lot of work. You'll see that embedded somewhat into that, the definition, and in this infographic that I put in that I embedded into the memo. It's an awful lot of work. This is not something you do once. It's something you do, redo, assess, redo. It is a process. So it's not something you implement. You say, okay, we did PLCs, what's next? PLCs is what you do. It's how you do it. And so the idea that we're adopting is this long-term view for what PLCs could bring. And there's some reasons why later on that I'll talk about. But I want to read this, what a PLC definition is, and not just for the board, you can see it and read it, but also there's others that are watching, maybe online, people in the audience that don't maybe understand what a PLC means. We do talk in educationese sometimes. So I want people to understand what a professional learning community is. So a professional learning community is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. So what does that really mean? It means teachers working together, not in isolation, but in a team, assessing around these 4 questions that I'll talk about real briefly, along collective inquiry, what do we see in the classroom, and then what an important piece, I think, is action research. So in action research, you identify a problem of practice. You say, this is what happens. This is a problem I see. So you're identifying that problem of practice. So what are we going to do about it? And so it's this opportunity where we work together to identify and solve problems about our instruction. And again, that doesn't mean that our instruction is poor. It just means that there's a process that we should work through. And I'll draw your attention to this infographic where, and I'm not going to talk through all of these pieces in here. That's something we'll do over the next 4 meetings when we talk about the individual questions, but these represent those questions. Essentially what it says is we need the 4 questions. You know, they are, they're really simple to say and to understand. They're really complex to do. Okay? So the first question is, what do we want our students to know and learn? So standards. What are the standards that we have for our kids at every grade level? What are the essential learnings that they're going to come out of first grade with, out of North Dakota studies, whatever it is? You know, what are our essential learnings? The second question, how will we know if they've learned it? Well, we assess them. What do those assessments tell us? Not just summative assessments. What did they learn, but what are they learning right now? And if they aren't learning it right now, what am I doing to change practice so they do? So that cycle of formative and summative assessment. So how do we know when it's done and when it's happening? The third question, what do we do if they don't learn it? So how are we intervening? We know that we have a system of interventions in place for kids. So what are we doing in the classroom if they don't learn it? And then the fourth question, what do we do if they already have learned it, if they already know it, or if they do learn it? So that's the idea of enrichment. So if you think about those 4 questions as a kind of as a primer, and you look in this infographic, you'll see we first identify what we want kids to know. We move into introducing them to learning targets and checks for understanding. That's where that formative assessment piece comes in. So we teach, we assess. We teach, we assess. We teach, we assess. It's a cycle until we believe that students have learned. Then we move into the analyzing the summative. And if there are still students that aren't there, that's systems of interventions. Okay? So we're first focusing on the core and that cycle of formative assessment. Then we summative, then we move back into identifying standards again. It's not something, like I said, that you go once through the cycle. It's a continuous process. And so it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for teachers. But it's an important process. So the reason I share that is you may be familiar with an individual named John Hattie. Hattie did a ton of research related to engagement of students. And he found an effect size of 0.4, so 40. You know, what does an effect size mean? That's essentially the effect of teachers on a student in a year's worth of teaching. So think of 0.4, 40, is representing a year's worth of growth. Okay? If you look at Hattie's research on professional learning communities, collective efficacy, meaning the commitment of our school community to implement PLCs with fidelity, essentially equated to 4 years of growth, 4 years of teaching. That's how big of an impact PLCs have if you do them the right way. It's very, very easy to do PLC light and not PLC right. So we can do aspects of PLC. What Hattie's talking about is if you do it the right way, if you implement it with fidelity. That's what equates to almost 4 years of growth. It's not just sort of doing collaboration. I call that co-collaboration, by the way. That's just talking about, it's admiring the problem. Where we're talking PLCs, it's a cycle of identifying, assessing, re-identifying, and assessing in this constant order of looking at how we're doing. Because every class is different. You know, every group of students is different. And so it's a lot of work. But like I said, that hinge point of 0.4 for a year of growth, almost 4 years of growth equated to doing PLC right. So there's 3 big shifts that we should be aware of that kind of underpin professional learning communities. And that's a focus on learning over a focus on teaching. So what are kids learning versus how am I teaching, or what am I teaching? Okay. There's a collaborative culture over working in isolation. I think we all know that, working together. I think that's kind of common sense. If we leverage the knowledge of everybody together, that's better than working in isolation. We close our doors. That's kind of the old paradigm of education, at least the belief of education. We close our doors and, well, I teach Algebra 1, so that's what I do. Well, we know that collaborative culture trumps what we can do in isolation. And so collaborative culture over working in isolation is the other big shift. And the last big shift is results orientation over focus on procedures and process. What happens is more important than what I do. And so those three big shifts kind of lead into those four essential questions of what do we want our students to learn, how will we know if they've learned it, what will we do if they don't learn, and what do we do if they already know it. So those are the four, and our future education, like I said, is embedded around or is built around those four questions. And we wanted you to hear from instructional coaches and teachers, those that are doing the work in a PLC. And so we wanted to keep it away from me. We wanted to keep it away from other administrators. We want you to hear from teachers that are doing the work. Okay? So what's already occurred in our district? We've been fortunate that the Striving Readers Grant, we sent a large leadership team, somebody representing every school, every position in the district that would work in PLCs, administrators, teachers, instructional coaches, to a 3-day PLC Institute. We've done a 1-day foundational training that was specialized for elementary and then secondary for every teacher in the district. We have recently engaged with Solution Tree. We actually had the training last week for our initial training for our leadership team again, just assessing where we're at, giving us guidance on how to proceed and improve the process. That happened 1 day or 2 days last week. This individual will come back, Michael Mufani. He'll come back again for our leadership team later on. And again, that's all supported through the Striving Readers. But lots of work that the district has done, lots of work that leadership team has done to implement PLC right and not PLC light. So what still needs to occur? Really a lot of training still. We've done a lot, but this isn't a process that, it's a messy process. It's growing something like this takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of training. So extensive training continues to happen for our leadership team. They are sharing information on days like today in a professional, in our PD day. Our focus was PLC implementation, so we've been working on that. Really using that leadership team to support that's why we felt it was important to have people in every building trained so they could know how to do things the correct way. We have already, as you know, started a Wednesday late starts. The reason we do that is PLC time. We have to provide time in the workday for this to happen. That's doing PLC right. If we just provided time at some time, randomly throughout the year or after somebody's time in work during the day, or maybe ask them to come in before school starts, that's PLC light. That's not going to work. We have to provide embedded time into their day. And so we've been very fortunate that the board has said, yes, that works. We've been very lucky that the community has said, we understand why you need that time. And so we're fortunate we have it. But there's still more to do. But essentially, that is the end of my piece of board education. With the PLC over, I'm certainly open to questions. And just wanted to outline what that schedule will be. So the next 4 board meetings focused on each of those questions that we've already talked about. They'll go more into depth than I did. I just wanted to give you an overview.
Jason?
You alluded to the PLC leadership team continuing to be trained also. Will that be now amongst themselves? Will we bring people in? Is there like a phase 2 type thing for the leadership team?
Yep, that's what they're doing right now. So they all had training. Now we're getting individual training here. Before they went to the PLC Institute, that was in Minneapolis. So we have contracted through the Striving Readers Grant with Solution Tree. Solution Tree brings we have worked with Michael Mufani. He comes in. This last training was 2 days. We'll get another 2-day training. And so that'll just continue until we feel implementation is done the right way.
Any other questions? Diane?
I think once all the training is done, my question, I hope the public is aware of why we're delaying on Wednesday mornings. My question would be that it sounds like it's very important that we always give our teaching staff time to collaborate, because without that, the whole thing falls apart. So is the view into the future that they will always have this collaborative time, and that is what they're doing right now?
That's a great question. I think that if we want to do PLCs as a district, if that is a commitment and a priority, embedded time in the schedule is it's just an essential. You can't do PLCs the right way. You can't do PLC right. You'll do PLC light if you don't have time for teachers to collaborate. It is the most important aspect of PLCs. They have to have the time embedded into their day to do this work because it is complex. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of data. It takes our instructional coaches to support. It takes our administrators. It takes our teachers in those PLCs. Everybody's working towards the same goal. So it is without a doubt the number one driver. Things that we have to think about are having time embedded into the day.
And to follow that up, do you have a sense yet of what our professional staff thinks of this idea? And are they on board with making time not to do lesson plans, but to work with other teachers on collaborating? You know, are they going to be able to fit it in? Do they see this as a positive thing?
I think that's a good question too. And I think anytime you try something new or you do something new, you have to first commit to answering the why question. You know, why are we doing this? And if you can do that, you mitigate a lot of that. But there's always in any initiative you do, there's always going to be some where you have to continue to answer the why question and reinforce the why. But I think as a general rule, PLCs are not a new thing. And I think we've had a lot of professional staff. I should say we've had a lot of professionals across not just Jamestown or North Dakota, everywhere, asking for more time to collaborate. Because I don't think it's rocket science to say we learn better as a team than we do individually on our own. So collaboration has always been something that's been important to people. It's the structure of the PLC, I think, that makes it different. It isn't collaboration, just people getting together and talk. It's getting together and talking around the framework of how do you make it better. So it's the framework that makes it, that's important. And I think, in terms of PLCs, the proof will be in results. I think when people make the commitment and they see that it's making a difference in their practice and what happens in their classroom, but then also what students are learning, it kind of, it speaks for itself.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Leck on the PLC overview? Okay, moving on in our agenda, then we're on to letter E, the strategic plan goal review. Dr. Leck, we have a couple of things here, the standards-based education and 21st century readiness.
Yeah, so thank you. So with two areas that we have scheduled to talk about today are academic engagement, personalized learning, and then standard-based education with 21st century readiness. I'm not going to talk a lot about Strategic Initiative 1. That focuses a lot on, and the standards-based education, I should say, focuses a lot on all of the 4 questions. There's a reason why we're moving forward with PLCs. And there's a reason why we have these goals. I think that PLCs and these goals are intertwined together. This is best practice. And so we've embedded PLCs into our goals, but really everything that exists in a standards-based education really centers around PLCs. So we just spent some time talking about that. You're going to hear over the series of the next 4 meetings what PLCs happen from a teacher and instructional coach perspective, what they do during that time. I would like to have them as the experts share more of that with you. I want you to know, though, just to reinforce, boy, this is something we commit to as district leaders, as teachers. This is something that we feel is best practice and what's going to make a difference for kids. And so this is something we've committed to. But in terms of standards-based education, that's really what we just talked about for the last 20 minutes. So you've already heard what we're doing, that we are adhering to those 4 essential questions, and how we're doing it. We're going about in training an executive leadership team, and then we're implementing through late starts and that collaboration time. So the 21st century time, Similarly to our previous goal, this is really an integral strategy, PLCs, is into how this works. Our teachers work collaboratively around those 4 essential questions. A lot of 21st century readiness is going to be embedded in those collaborative conversations that our teachers have. So additionally, beyond that, we've also put a team of teachers and administrators together to examine the viability and to recommend a learning management system. So that's a platform in which learning would take place. If you're in the higher ed world at all, you're pretty familiar with learning management systems. Many districts across the country are adopting learning management systems as solutions to support 21st century readiness and 21st century learning. We're no different than that. We think it's a great opportunity. And LMS is a part of our strategic plan, so we wanted to make sure that we are engaging in that. That is actually, we've talked a lot about the Teacher Leadership Academy. That is actually one of our internship opportunities, and we have 2 teachers, Cody Mickelson and Tiffany Hillstrom, are leading that process because of the internship. And along with Mr. Gaylor, who is our administrative rep, those are the 3 that are guiding our district along this process. They've done a wonderful job. They have a series of 3 meetings scheduled, 1 the overview, 2nd touring, and then 3 discussion on selection. So they're going to go to other districts that have learning management systems, see which options they like, why do they like it, what do they see as benefits, what do they see as hangups when they implement it, things of that nature. And of course, our new professional development committee, which Mr. Hegland recently shared strategic plan update with the board, using our teachers and our support staff to help us select professional development. 21st century learning is a piece of that also. We want to make sure that whatever we integrate into the district is supported and can be used by our staff, so that's another piece. The last piece that I wanted to share about is we're currently piloting Second Step. That's a social emotional learning curriculum. We are piloting that in every building in our elementary, because we already have 7 mindsets. That's our social emotional curriculum for middle school and high school. Second Step, that will be piloted in every building at every grade level. So not necessarily K through 5 in every building, but 2nd grade in Washington, for example. I don't think that's the class. I'm just using it as an example. Might be 3rd grade in Washington, might be kindergarten and 5th grade at Louis L'Amour. So every building, so every teacher is going to have a grade level peer that they can talk to about what's happening in this pilot, and they're going to have a school peer that they can talk to. So somebody at Louis, for example, might be able to talk to the 5th grade teacher who's doing it, or the 4th grade teacher, whichever teacher is doing it. But they'd also have a grade level peer when they do collaboration, would also have that opportunity to visit with them as well. So with that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Leck. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the strategic plan goal review? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on. We have nothing under old business, so we're going to move into new business. We have nothing under activities or buildings and grounds, so then we will move into number 3, which is curriculum assessment and instruction. There, for our information, is the James Valley Career Technology Center Plan of Action and the visioning report. Are there any questions or comments? Dr. Leck?
I was just going to point out, you've seen the visioning report before. The plan of action does not require board approval. It is something that is the administrator's response to, this is how we're going to accomplish that. It doesn't require, we're just providing it for information.
Any questions? Okay, moving on into finance. For our information is the general fund balance. Any questions related to that? Moving on, could I have a motion to approve the monthly financial reports? Motion by Jason, seconded by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have nothing under personnel, so then we'll move into policies and procedures. As we get through policies and procedures, we do have quite a few. I will try to join together as many as I can, so, but if I'm going too quickly for you, please let me know and I will slow down. Excuse me. So on our first letter A, may I have a motion to adopt the new board norms? Motion by Rogers, seconded by Bob. Any discussion? Jason?
I just wanted to make, or one question. I know in our previous norms, we had stewards of tax dollars, and I just wanted to make sure that number 2 there, the new one is to prudently prioritize resources and student. Is that kind of our way of stewards of tax dollars? Is that what we agreed upon? I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. For the Health Insurance Committee membership, I wanted to give you a little bit of background. As you recall, during the negotiations this time period, we now have the two members that were always a part of the Health Insurance Committee that represented the board are now voting members of the board. And so when, in the event one of us needs to be gone, that is a vote, then that is gone from the Health Insurance Committee. So I am making a motion to add a proxy to that committee, which I will assign, or if there's somebody who's interested in doing so, to let me know. And then it'll always be a part of the committees in July, the proxy position. So it'll be a third position. The individual wouldn't necessarily have to go to every single meeting, but would need to be familiar as to when they are held, so that if the 2 sitting members were not able to attend, then they would therefore have to be there.
I don't think you need a motion.
I don't need a motion? Okay, great. Just wanted to cover my bases in case I did. So any questions or comments on that? So I would ask that if you're interested, please feel free to email me. Otherwise, I'll just appoint someone. Moving on. Can I have a motion to approve the second reading of the records retention ABCD policy? Motion by Roger. Second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the standing committee's BBB policy and also the first reading of the school board committee's BBB policy? Second. Motion by Bob, seconded by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the employing board members BAA policy? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the board conflict of interest BAB policy? Motion by Roger, second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the news coverage of board meetings BCBB policy? Motion by Bob, second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the insurance for board members BDC policy? Motion by Roger, second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the consultants to the board BDBA policy? Motion by Steve. Second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of candidate orientation BEA policy? Motion by Roger.
Second.
Second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of board member development BE policy?
So moved.
Motion by Melissa, second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve to rescind vacancy of school board BBC policy and subsequent first reading of the method of filling a board vacancy and approval to amend the procedure for selecting appointee BBCBR? Motion by Roger, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can Can I have a motion to rescind the school attorney BDBB policy and approve the subsequent first reading of the retaining an attorney BDBB policy? Motion by Bob, second by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the membership in associations BDE policy and subsequent first reading of the membership in associations BDE policy? Motion by Roger. Second by Diane. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the meeting policy BCA? Motion by Jason, second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the minutes policy BCAC and subsequent first reading of the minutes policy? Motion by Roger, second by Jason. Steve, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the BEB orientation of new members and the subsequent approval of the first reading of the new member orientation policy? Motion by Melissa, second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the contract supersede policy and regulations BDAA policy? Motion by Roger. Second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to pass the review of savings clause policy BDAB? Motion by Jason. Second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the rules of decorum at board meetings, BCBA-BR? Motion by Melissa, second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the procedures of board meetings, BCAB policy, and the subsequent rescind of seating new members, approval of the first reading of the board meeting procedures, and approval of the first reading of procedures for seating new board at the annual meeting, BCA-BR? Motion by Roger. Second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to rescind the agenda format BCAA policy and subsequent first reading of the board meeting agenda and pre-meeting preparation policy? Motion by Bob. Second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement of a 7th grade Jamestown student attending Barnes County North Public Schools for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Melissa, second by Heidi. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving into our other section on our agenda, the election timeline. Sally?
It was brought forth last time, this memo, but, just for the public, the election is conducted, the school board election is conducted with in combination with the city election on June 9th. And there's 3 members whose terms expire in June of 2020, and they are Roger Hout, Diane Hansen, and Jennifer Schmidt, and a rural position, Steve Velkamp. So on June 9th, there'll be an election to elect 1 representative from the rural Jamestown Public School District and 3 representatives from the city of Jamestown. April 6th is the deadline for candidates to file the intent with the business manager, JPS, and all applications must be received legally by the timeframe of 4 p.m. on April 6th. On April 8th, we do a drawing for the name placement on the ballot that will be conducted at 4:15 in the central office conference room. The 4 board members that are up for re-election, I've handed them a packet. There's a packet of information. There is a form that needs to be completed, the intent that a statement that you are either rural or city, and it also outlines the time frame of this. So It will be on our web shortly. You know, our web person was out and was out ill today. So there will also be, you know, under our website, under school board, there will be the packet of information on that. And, you know, there is also legal timelines of when we have to publish it in the Jamestown Sun, and that information will be out shortly. So, any other questions?
Thank you for that, Sally. So if you have any, are there any items for future agendas? Sorry, did you have something, Jason? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry, just back to those elections, or could they just email someone from the central office and have those emailed, or is that not an option?
Yes, there's packets at the front desk with our receptionist, you know, Jane. They could, you know, somebody could request that I email them to them, that's fine. And they will also be on the web.
Thank you, Jason. So moving on, does anyone have any items for the future agendas? If anything comes up, please feel free to email myself or Dr. Lecht or both of us. So then meetings to be scheduled. Our next school board meeting will be on Monday, February 3rd at 5:15 in the Thompson Community Room here in the middle school. And then we also have our NDSBA negotiation seminar on Thursday and Friday, February 6th and 7th. That is held in Bismarck, North Dakota. All right, with that, school members, please remember to right-click on the monthly superintendent evaluation. It's sections 4 and 5 this month, and then also to right-click on the adjournment and let us know how we did for a meeting. With that, the meeting is adjourned.